Mr. Centeno, can you give us an impression of the general situation in the world as far as forests are concerned?
Certainly. Let's start by putting this like in a framework. In the case of Europe and the US, the North America, including Canada, only about 5% of the forest, of the surface of those countries is covered by what we can call natural or original forests. That's very little. In countries like the Netherlands, for example, or the UK, it's only 1%.
That's quite shocking.
That's quite shocking. So despite the fact that up to 30% of the European Union is covered by forests today, only a very small proportion of those forests can be classified as natural or original forests. The rest is man-made plantations. That makes those countries very poor in biodiversity. Mm-hmm. In the case of the tropics, for example, it's the other way around. Between 40 to 60% of the national surface of tropical countries is covered by natural, tropical, untouched, largely untouched natural forests. So the consequence of that is that most of the biodiversity of the world is concentrated in what we call today tropical forests, which cover only about 7% of the planet. But they are in danger. They are being destroyed. They have been destroyed over the last 20 to 25 years at the rate of about 14 million hectares per year. That's equivalent of about 20 city blocks every minute of every year for 25 years. So it's a huge destruction. It's a huge destruction that is threatening the stability of those countries, but it's also threatening the stability of the whole world, because these forests not only contain up to 80% of the animal and plant species of the whole world, but they also contribute to climate instability or climate change. It is understood today that up to 20% of the climate problem that we have today is caused by the destruction of tropical forests in particular.
Where does this problem come from?
The main problem, the main cause of this situation is poverty. In developing countries, tropical countries are all parts of the developing world. There is a very large proportion of the population which are extremely poor. In some countries, up to 80% of the people are classified as poor, and close to half of the population of Latin American countries, tropical Latin American countries, are classified as below the poverty line. These are people who don't have any possibilities of survival. They just scratch to live.
In spite of the fact that we think it's due to the commercial companies that are responsible for the deforestation.
Exactly. That has been a misunderstanding that has been on the table for many years, partly intentionally. Because today it is recognized that the logging industry contributes to deforestation and contributes to the destruction in a range of between 20 and 25% of the total destruction cost every year. So it is important and needs to be addressed. But it's not the key component of the causes of the deforestation problem. And there's a third component, which is the building of infrastructure, which is the continuous increase of roads and houses and all kinds of infrastructure to accommodate a growing population, which in turn depends on poverty. So it's normal, for example, in a Latin American country that the poorer part of the population, which accounts for over 80% of the total, it's normal for these people to have 6, 7, or 8 children per family, which is contrary to what happens in European countries where you may have only 1 or 2 children per family.
It sounds unsolvable.
It sounds unsolvable. It seems to be unsolvable because the United Nations bodies, several bodies like FAO, UNCTAD, the United Nations Environmental Program, the World Bank, and the Inter-American Development Bank, they all have tried to solve this problem for many years. That's how they have been spending up to $60 billion in the last 20 years, without basically any improvements. One of the reasons why it doesn't work is because they don't want to recognize and they don't want to address the key causes. And the main cause is poverty. And trying to solve the poverty problem implies political changes and social changes that people resist to. Not only within the countries. In the countries, there's normally a very small elite which represents between 5 to 10% of the population, which have control basically all production means. Mm-hmm. And then there is 90% of the population, 80 to 90%, who are very poor and have no control of economic or political power. To change that implies what many people call revolutions, and nobody wants to have revolutions anymore.
But now we can't solve the whole problem at once. But where is the responsibility of a company like Floresteca? I mean, they're one of the companies that are responsible as well.
Not exactly, because logging, this 20% of deforestation that is caused by logging, is done by companies who log the natural forest. So they didn't plant those forests. The forest was there to start with, and they just come and harvest those trees to make money, basically. A company like Floresteca is not harvesting the natural forest, it's planting its own forest, where there was no forest before. The land where these plantations are established were old cattle ranches, which in turn was on land that had been forest before, 20, 30 years ago. These lands were abandoned, and then this company comes to plant trees where there were no forests before. So one key difference is that companies like Floresteca is creating its own forest and harvesting its own forest. Now, one of the benefits of this activity is that by creating your own forest and producing industrial timber from these plantations, then you release pressure from the natural forest. You don't need to harvest the natural forest anymore. Second, by planting trees not necessarily have to grow by breathing and capturing carbon from the air. That is a natural process that people call photosynthesis. So it's completely natural that trees would absorb carbon from the air in order to build its own tissues and wood and branches and leaves and roots. So one additional benefit from a plantation is that it captures carbon from the air, and by doing that diminishes the climate of the world, which is caused by the emission of gases from cars and the consumption of oil and gas and other energy resources. So it has that additional component which is contributing to climate stability. On the other hand, it also creates jobs. By creating jobs, you contribute to the alleviation of poverty, which is a main cause of the destruction. You create economic wealth where there was no wealth before. So there's a series of benefits around a project like this, a plantation like Floresteca, that has economic benefits, it has social benefits, and it has environmental benefits. So it seems that this type of initiative should be reproduced. There should be 1,000 Florestecas around the world to magnify the economic, social, and environmental benefits that we have been talking about.
In fact, you're telling me that Floresteca is the only company that takes its responsibility and gives something in return?
Yes, one of the differences of a company like Floresteca is that it has recognized and accepted that it has a social and an environmental responsibility. The business is not only to make money and to make the largest amount of money possible, independent of the environmental and social impacts, but on the other hand, it has recognized they have a responsibility and they are willing to tackle that responsibility. So they have programs to contribute to the stability of the families, of the workers of the company. They have programs to help people in need around the company to create the stability for the whole region, which is not only a benefit, it's not only a aid, say, in the sense that you contribute, you do that because you want to contribute, but also because it's a need for the company. It's important for the company to have its employees healthy, so you need health programs. It's important for the company to have educated workers, so you need educational programs. It's important for the company to maintain the plantation for generations, so you need to have environmental stability. So it works both ways. There's a benefit for the company, and it's a benefit for the social and the environment where the plantation is located.
How do you see the future?
I'm optimistic that more and more companies are becoming aware of the responsibility and willing to accept that responsibility. More and more companies, for example, in the US and in Europe, are clearly expressing that responsibility, especially in the climate change area, for example. It's clear that many companies are recognizing that they are part of the problem and that they should be part of the solution.
How Floresteca can contribute to awareness?
Yes, I think that by communicating the results of its own operations, by informing people what are the causes and consequences of their own activities, they will make people aware, and by making people aware, those people, I expect, would react and say, I want to be part of this, I want to contribute. The shareholders of Floresteca, the investors of Floresteca, are individuals, mainly Dutch individuals. So they invest in a company that not only produces economic returns to your investment, significant economic returns to your investment, higher than many other investments, but at the same time, that investor receiving a return also is contributing to social benefits in Brazil and obviously around the world, economic benefits and environmental benefits. So it's like a package where the investment not only brings economic returns, but also brings social and environmental returns. And that is unique compared to many other investments in the normal market today.
Let's hope it will be recognized.
Yes, let's hope it will be recognized.